There are people who make things happen. There are people who watch things happen. And there are people who wonder what just happened. To be successful, you need to be a person who makes things happen. Jim Lovell.
From my atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we shouldn't only celebrate the greatest living Americans when they pass from our midst. And with that spirit in mind, we wish the greatest living American, James Arthur Lovell Jr., Cleveland, Ohio, Captain, U.S. Navy, Pilot, Gemini 7, Commander, Gemini 12, Command Module Pilot, Apollo 8, and of course, most famously, the mission that made him the American Shackleton, Commander Apollo 13, a happy, very happy 97th birthday yesterday, and many happy returns. We can do some Apollo talk tonight if the audience would like, but the normal rule applies. If you get into any idiotic moon landing conspiracy horse shit, you are banned from the chat. There will be no prior warning. And with those pleasantries having been dispensed with, good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. Happy Easter. Happy WrestleMania Sunday. If you're watching us instead of WrestleMania, we are very honored indeed. And here is your golden age of Western civilization news roundup for the week ending 18 April 2025. Dateline Crazy Town, Monday, 14 April. America's most morally execrable fake news disgraced journalist, 98-year-old Taylor Lorenz. Yes, she actually is older than Jim Lovell. It's a little known fact. Was in the news this week, regrettably. And how did she get in the news? Well, in that same way that psychotic, untalented hacks who have worn out their welcome in the mainstream fake news media always do, by dialing the crazy knob upward and upward for as long as it takes until somebody finally agrees to shoot an interview with you. And so what did 106-year-old Taylor Lorenz, who used to work at the New York Times until they got sick of all the lawsuits and fired her ass, and then she somehow got herself hired over at the Washington Post and spent most of her time there doxing teenagers for being transphobic, until Jeff Bezos also got sick of all the lawsuits and fired her ass. What did she have to do this week to get a little taste of that sweet, sweet nectar of 2 minutes of cable TV FaceTime? Well, she had to publicly orgasm over a cold-blooded killer, allegedly. And if you question that characterization, I encourage you to view the footage and then dispute it. I don't want to get too graphic here. I know we have lots of elderly viewers with delicate sensibilities, but you can practically hear the sound of her thighs moistening as she talks about how totally dreamy Luigi Mangione is. Luigi Mangione, of course, is the maniac who, allegedly, murdered the CEO of a healthcare company in New York City last year for the crime of being the CEO of a healthcare company. And for reasons that are so bizarre I am powerless to comprehend them, a lot of dumb leftist women like 119-year-old Taylor Lorenz think that makes him a very desirable sex symbol, which I think is not an unreasonable inference when you hear the way that the 212-year-old Ms. Lorenz is quite literally purring and cooing as she is describing the murderer's wonderful personal qualities. But if anything, at least she understands the game she is playing here, because that's just the front end of the project. After all, positioning yourself as the same sort of chick who would have camped out on the sidewalk for Charlie Manson, or sent pussy pics to Ted Bundy, or married the Night Stalker, you get a certain amount of exposure from that, from your fellow idiot wokesters who say, yeah, I guess that killer is pretty dreamy now that I think about it. The back end of the project, probably the most lucrative part, is the conservative outrage. So right on cue, here is 326-year-old Taylor Lorenz on the Sean Hannity show the other night, and that is exactly the 2-minute cable TV hit she was trying so desperately to get, and she sits there with a straight face protesting that, oh, no, of course those aren't my feelings about Luigi. I am just relating what I have heard other women say, while rubbing my thighs together vigorously as my eyes roll back in my head and I pound the table shouting, yes, 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 Luigi, my mighty Roman vengeance god! As the girl holding the microphone boom quietly remarks, I'll have what that 367-year-old lady is having. Dateline Washington, Tuesday, 15 April. The fake city government in our nation's capital announced the beginning of their alleged annual spring cleaning initiative this week, the news of which might come as a shock to people who regularly visit the city and think it looks pretty grimy and filthy the whole year round. Fake Mayor Muriel Bowser, having just emerged from a lengthy period in hiding while recovering from the terrible indignity of Trump forcing her to erase the big Black Lives Matter letters that she ordered festooned upon the ground of the 800 block of 16th Avenue back during the summer of love in 2020. But my favorite part of that story, that was when a kid got arrested and charged with an actual hate crime for doing donuts in that intersection and thus desecrating the fake mayor's graffiti that she put on the ground. Because that's where we are in America in the third decade of the 21st century, ladies and gentlemen. We only focus on the important things that really matter. I mean, I can picture giving the kid a ticket for reckless driving, being kind of a dickhead, but they didn't care about any of that. The fake city government of Washington decided that the only perceived offense they cared about here was that they characterized leaving a tire mark on top of the word black as an act of intolerable race hatred that has to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I mean, it's basically the same thing as slavery when you get right down to it. And here's the part where I state for the 10th or the 20th time, my vision for the future of the District of Columbia. It should be depopulated of permanent residents, just like the Gaza Strip should be, and it should be transformed into a nice museum city and an America theme park. The kind of place that average American parents would never have to think twice about taking their kids to. The kind of place Disneyland used to be, before they charged you $150 a head just for your daughter to get groomed by a fat, bearded transvestite as soon as she gets in the door. Our founders never viewed the District of Columbia as a traditional city that lots of people would live in, and it never was that, not for the first 80 or so years at least. It only became that when the city had to be garrisoned during the Civil War. The War of Dastardly Yankee Aggression, when, as a practical matter, Washington City, as it was called in those days, was a territorial exclave of the United States. Virginia was in full rebellion on one side, and on the other side, sure, Maryland never actually seceded from the Union, but it was a slave state, and there was no shortage of rebel sympathizers there, even actual rebels. But the fact that Washington ever gained a sizable permanent population is still, right up to the present day, a weird vestige of the war between the states, and one that we ought to fix. The first step should be getting rid of the fake city government and returning, in principle and in practice, to direct federal administration. And let's stop pretending Washington will ever be a state. It's gonna be America Disneyland, brought to you by Trump Resorts Incorporated, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be fantastic. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And we will build the Trump Monument on the site where the Hoover Building once stood, because fuck you, Edgar. Dateline San Salvador, Wednesday, 16 April. Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, whom you had probably never heard of 7 days ago, managed to make himself into the most widely mocked man in the whole country by the end of the work week, which, irrespective of whose side you're on, I think we can all agree that that's quite an auspicious achievement indeed. With this weird sort of quasi-religious pilgrimage that he made down to San Salvador to check on the welfare of the constituent whose well-being matters most of all to him, that being the illegal alien MS-13 gangbanger and human trafficker, allegedly, and wife-beater, allegedly, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who's really become quite the cause celeb in the media Democrat complex. I mean, hell, this is the second straight week he's been in the roundup. That's how important this motherfucker is. But ladies and gentlemen, as intrepid journalists and ruggedly handsome slabs of USDA select man meat, we have a certain solemn duty here on this program, one of which is correcting misconceptions. So, let's talk about certain misconceptions about our friend Kilmar. Can I call you Kilmar? Or would you prefer inmate number 2345556? Either way, makes no difference to me. So you may have heard, you've almost certainly heard, that Kilmar was deported to El Salvador by mistake, even though he is a Salvadoran national, which seems weird. And if you're on the media Democrat complex side of things, you're arguing that this administrative error should render the whole process moot and invalid, and Homeboy should be able to come back home to Maryland and smack his old lady around a little bit more. So how can it be an administrative error when you deport a scumbag back to the very self-same country the scumbag is from? Well, because Kilmar, a few years ago, he managed to convince some idiot Biden immigration judge that he can't be sent back to El Salvador because, you see, as a member of MS-13, he fears being targeted by their rival gang. But wait, I hear you say, isn't everybody in the media Democrat complex falling all over themselves saying there is no evidence this guy is an MS-13 member? Well, yes. Yes, they are. It's almost like one aspect of their argument directly negates and defeats another aspect of their argument and thus renders the whole thing invalid. And they don't want to talk about it very much, which you can't really blame them for. So let's talk about it, shall we? And let's pay particular attention to the photos of the meeting between Kilmar and his good friend Senator Van Hollen, because yes, he had to go to the prison and make a goddamn annoying nuisance of himself for about 2.5 days, but finally, at long last, he did manage to secure a meeting with Kilmar. Now, what's the first thing that jumps out at the viewer about these pictures? Well, Kilmar is wearing a Kansas City Chiefs hat, which seems like a weird thing for a Maryland senator to bring along for this guy to wear. It seems like a Maryland senator would bring a Ravens hat, unless he was afraid of his constituents freaking out about their team's hat being on that dude's head. Or, the other possibility is, he wanted to subtly sort of throw shade at one of the Ravens' most hated rivals, in which case, you have to say, that's a pretty good troll. Now, the second thing that jumps out at you about these photographs is the array of beverages that are sitting on the table. And this became a matter of some controversy yesterday since President Bukele of El Salvador accused the senator of sipping margaritas with the MS-13 dude. So I'm going to tell you exactly what happened here. And it's actually pretty funny. So Van Hollen's people, when they were staging the scene, they told Kilmar, you gotta keep your hands out of sight, keep them under the table so nobody can see your MS-13 knuckle tats. So what does Bukele do? He keeps sending his people in with an enticing array of yummy beverages in the hope they can get the guy to break and take a sip. Meanwhile, as much fun as it is to laugh at all of that, let's also bear in mind there is no record of Chris Van Hollen ever placing a call or sending a note of condolence to any of his actual constituents who have lost loved ones or been otherwise suffered from the depredations of Joe Biden's illegal aliens, and he should be ashamed of himself for that. If he thought this stunt this week was going to be some sort of springboard to the presidency, well, he's a fucking idiot. Dateline Atlanta, Thursday, 17 April. In a story that reminds us the hilarious extent to which the legacy fake news media have completely lost their ability to shape public opinion, a CNN poll And God, how painful it must have been for them to publish these numbers, indicated this week that 56% of Americans are fully supportive of every person unlawfully present in the country being forcibly removed. And just think about the years and decades and money and resources that have been expended and all the prestige and credibility that have been squandered by CNN and its fellow legacy fake news sludge factories in the pursuit of making everybody love illegal aliens. And for a while, up to a point, it actually worked reasonably well. But you can see how the law of diminishing returns comes into play when you consider that in 2016, less than a decade ago, when Obama was still the president, that number stood at 38%. But even still, even then, when it looks like it was a manageable number politically, it was already trending in the wrong direction for the Dems, as evidenced by the fact that Donald Trump won the White House that year on the most hawkish immigration campaign of the last 100 years or more. But still, they persisted in the belief that if they had a dutiful fake news media establishment running interference for them on this stuff, they could still manage to make the project successful. And when they bet the whole farm and every animal on the farm in order to drag the corpse of Joe Biden into the White House in 2020, they knew this was probably their last chance to complete the front end of the project. You see, getting the 15 or 20 million illegals into the country is only half the battle. The back end of the project is that you have to make it impossible to remove any of them. And that's what this Kill Mar Abrego Garcia thing is really about. That's why we are seeing such unhinged, indefensible rulings from Democrat Party apparatchik judges, because if Trump is actually able to remove all of these imported criminals en masse, then the open borders project that took both parties 60 years to build lies in ruins, along with the dream of every free trade globalist douchebag that was happy to enrich himself on the back of that whole crooked-ass system by hollowing out his own country and consigning its own people to decay and despair while he laughed all the way to the bank. Do I like it when people like that lose and suffer? Yeah, you bet your sweet ass I do. I like it when they lose damn good and hard. Dateline Ottawa, Friday, 18 April. Canada's newly elected Prime Minister... Wait, that's not right, sorry. Canada's new unelected Prime Minister took great pains this week to distance himself from the disgraced former Prime Minister Trudeau, during the first round of debates ahead of this fall's general election up in the Great White North. And I guess it's a peculiar quirk of the Westminster parliamentary system, some might even call it a fatal flaw, that it allows for a man to become the head of government who has been elected to no office whatsoever. And yeah, I know the Canadian system isn't a direct copy of the Westminster system. It's more of a bastardized, sort of semi-Americanized hybrid version of it, but clearly it retains possibly the worst flaw of said system. And why is that important? Well, because it's damn difficult to position yourself as a democratic leader when you have been installed in office by means other than voters voting for you. The only example we have in this country that is remotely close to that is Jerry Ford ascending to the presidency 50 years ago despite having been elected to no higher office than congressman from the Michigan 5th District. But he was elected to something, damn it! Prime Minister Mark Carney? Not so much. And I'm at the boundary of my knowledge here because I understand how an unelected prime minister can be installed by the party currently in power, but if he wants to remain the prime minister, which he says he does, then doesn't he have to be elected to the House of Commons from the district where he resides? I don't know. Somebody should tell me in the chat. Or has the whole fucking world gone mad? That's possible too. And though it looked for a time like Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives were in a position to claim power in the general election, if the current polling is to be believed, the Canadian people are such impossibly self-hating cucks that it looks like they might actually return the Liberals to power, even after the last decade plus of a ruling party mistreating the citizenry in ways that previously could not have been imagined anywhere in the Anglosphere. But I guess you can't save people from themselves. I just hope this trade war ends soon because, goddammit, I haven't had a decent bowl of poutine in weeks. And that's the end of the roundup. Don't think I don't see you glancing away and watching WrestleMania because I prattle on so goddamn long. It's a two-way camera, you know. Okay, and speaking of being saved from yourself, it's just about that time for your humble correspondent. And so with that, I hand you off to my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, A man who is so hairy you can fill up a heavy bag with what he leaves behind after a body wax, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Easter. It's Bunny Day. Everybody hop around, find you some eggs or something. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know about you, but I ate about half a bunny this morning. Turns out it wasn't chocolate. Not sure what that thing was. It's still kicking around in my desk upstairs. I don't know what to name it. Welcome to the Blast Radius, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, I have brought a couple of very atrocious songs written by Chat Music. I've got some stories essentially surrounding the concept of autism, toddlers, and tablets. Also, there's a little bit of ADHD running around here. We're going to talk about all of that stuff. So, let's get to it.
Hello, audience.
Check this out. Now, we're going to talk about this particular scene later. I just want to prime the audience with that visual image, what you think might happen in the future. So, all right, so you want to go through chat before we jump into this stuff?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that thing there that we talk about doing sometimes. Scrolling back. Okay, you want to bet who's the first one in?
Scotty Waddles. Hey now.
Hey now.
Hey now.
The Scotty Waddles monster, which is terrifying to me because he's going to beat me everywhere. Like, he'll be
Indeed.
there before I get there.
Mm-hmm.
We got butt phone. There's a story there.
Is there? I would love to hear that story, actually.
I might have the clip. I'll have to dig around, see if I have the clip. But it's about a dude in prison who kept a phone in his butt.
And I like the chat message too. Click like or Sasquatch will haunt your dreams. Yeah, let's put that up there. Yeah. Words to live by, ladies and gentlemen.
You got Peace Dynamo. Welcome, man. Appreciate it.
Well, and that means also you have to click like on both channels. Or if you don't do both, he'll haunt your dreams either way.
Well, I mean, I'm a haunting figure in any event, especially with the bunny ears.
It's true. That's what we love about you.
We got Denislav Mandatory Carry. Welcome in, bud. Appreciate you coming through. Ben T is in the house. Good to see you, brother. We've got
Hello, Ben.
Crazy. Batshit crazy. I think that's how you say it. It's a 420 Easter. That's right. I wonder if there's
what a very evocative screen name that is. Batshit crazy.
Right?
It makes you say it the way he wants you to. I like it.
Exactly right. He even types that way in chat. It's kind of weird, but okay. I mean, you do you, boo boo. All right. So let's first of all, we are not experts. We are a couple of idiots on opposite sides of the country who get together once a week and discuss things we find in the news. And one of the things I found in the news this week was the suggestion by a couple of studies from different places that are suggesting that the tablet culture of the past 10 years of just handing your child a tablet has a negative effect on various autism studies and ADHD studies. That the attention deficit issue is based around short-term attention, right? Not it's what works.
And also, as you said, as you already prefaced by saying we are not experts here, but one can't help but wondering, just from a reasonably informed layman's perspective, how much of this has to do with definitions changing, either for autism or ADHD or something else, or whether environmental factors are to blame, or the big elephant in the room that we're not supposed to ever talk about is how much of this has to do with women having children at later ages than they ever used to have them before. And maybe it's just all of those are ingredients in the witch's brew. I can't say. I don't know.
Isn't there a disease carried by cats that makes old ladies love them?
Yes, it's called old lady cat disease.
Right. Okay, so the attention deficit issue. See, there's been studies that have gone unmentioned for the past, like, I don't know, decade or two on the whole fluoride question. What fluoride does to nervous systems and whatnot, and then the fact
And
that
I
it's
just reflexively want to make Doctor Strangelove jokes every time this comes up. I apologize in advance.
I just heard all of them.
We're finally saving our precious bodily fluids, God damn it.
Right. So you wake up in the morning, you've got 3 kids, you've got one in school, and the other 2 are infant and toddler, and you put the one on the bus, they go to school, and then what do? Do you give the middle child a tablet and go deal with the baby? I think 90% of parents do at this point. I mean, if it's not that, it's put them in front of a TV, and the TV's no longer hooked up.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, back in my day, you stuck them in front of the TV, God damn it.
Well, yeah, but that's the same thing today.
But
like,
yeah, I guess you can just as well hand them a tablet now. I mean, I guess I'm betraying how long it's been since I had small children.
my adult daughter will sit cross-legged in the living room with the TV on a YouTube channel playing Vine clips, her phone streaming somebody backstage on something somewhere with someone, and then sitting there with her computer like chatting with 15 different windows open. And that's just normal to her. That's her normal, right? Anything less
Hi, Queen Bird.
that is going to be an issue. Like, she's not going to pay half of it any attention because she's going to be too worried about trying to check her phone. You know?
And I can't say anything about that because I sometimes catch myself having 3 screens going also.
Well,
as much as I hate to admit it.
I mean, I'm not even throwing shade about this. I've done it all my life. When I worked in the movie stores, we had to check all the videos to make sure they were functional and whatnot. And it wasn't based on complaints. It was based on a time schedule. And so there might be 26 tapes that you had to review in an 8-hour shift. And you just can't do that unless you have several of them running simultaneously.
You had to check the Fast Times at Ridgemont High tape to see if it was about to snap and where the part where Phoebe Cates gets her tits out.
Yeah. So we had some douchebag in our town that would like clip out pieces of movies and just.
Oh yeah, you told me about that. Yeah.
And it wasn't me. And that was one of the parts they clipped out of one of the movies was that specific scene. And I've always wondered where it got put.
Yeah, because seriously, every guy who ever worked at a video store in the 80s or 90s will tell you that the Fast Times at Ridgemont High tapes would always fail right in that spot. Yeah, what a quaint time we used to live in.
You'd end up with a missing spot, right? Just a clip, a weird jump edit that doesn't really make sense where it happens.
Yeah, and that's the last place you want a big jump cut.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So y'all remember this chick, right? Don't forget about her. We're gonna have some.
How could we?
This one. Yeah, it's gonna be lovely. You're gonna love it. It's great. So that's Chat Music, and if you haven't come across Chat Music before, basically it's a guy using AI and comments from different TikTok and YouTube videos to assemble songs based around the comments and the video. And it's just, I mean, it's rare in our lives that we come across an apex of different forces coming together flawlessly. And
I think that's great. And stuff like that makes me less freaked out than some people are about AI potentially being the death of art. Because I think there's another side of that coin where AI is going to be able to artistic frontiers are going to be opened up that have never occurred to anybody, and some of it might be pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, it will be really, really cool, but at the same time, I mean, in the art, music,
but it shouldn't replace actual art. It should be complementary somehow. Obviously it's going to, because we don't know how to do things without overdoing them. Exactly. And then we noticed 20 years later that we overdid the thing and said, well, God, how do we fix this?
All right, so let's do it.
She identifies as her. Factory reset, getting work. Like flip right in the non-binary. You can feel the pronouns leaving the body. Right in the pavement. No
She identifies as hurt.
I'm telling you right now, I don't care if it's AI. If I wrote that, I would be thrilled with myself.
Right?
surgery needed then. Transaction denied. Ooh, I need for us. Sort of like she got down in Fortnite.
Look like she got downed in Fortnite. Transaction denied.
Transaction denied.
Tried to clip flip.
It almost sounds like instrumentally. It almost sounds like Roman Reigns' walk-up music.
Kinda. Oh wow.
No lips on, she gender fluid everywhere. It almost became almost where. That's a cheap way to.
Doesn't it sound like wrestling music?
It does kinda now.
Mission, lap slam right in the mystery box, right in the who knows what, like using your card at an ATM.
Motherfucker said like using your card at an ATM.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, this is such a perfect thing. There's so many of them already that you can just sit endlessly and giggle maniacally and no one will know why.
I think it's great that robots can make me laugh.
Sure, but does that put comedians out of work? I don't know. You
Oh, who cares? Comedians are overrated anyway.
Hey, John Joe Clown, busted your lip for show. Take away the more penis, 9 months later, Tony Hollywood.
All right, so we have a couple of choices here. Just to show you that that's not a fluke, I'll let you
Bottom
choose
right,
that.
bottom right, bottom right.
All right.
I often dread medical appointments because of latent medical fat phobia. This OB appointment that I just went to, the provider was amazing. She asked me what my pronouns are.
And then you ate her pronouns are all
Ladies and gentlemen, this is because you are absolute savages. That is the only reason this is possible. This couldn't
And
happen.
then you ate her.
And then you ate her.
hungry, you crying, baby. She has more chins than a Chinese phone book. Her pronouns are finger licking good pronouns.
Motherfucker said her pronouns are finger looking good.
No, go back a few seconds. There's a line I missed that I want to remember.
Were you crying out gravy?
No, it said my pronouns are all you can eat. Oh, just beautiful.
Were you crying out gravy? She has more chins than a Chinese phone book. Her pronouns are finger licking good pronouns are nom nom. Never thought we meet again. Necklace.
Her pronouns are nom.
Nom nom nom.
Necklace behavior.
Behavior pronouns are she ate them. Wait a minute.
Her pronouns are she ate them. Wait a minute, with the weight spelled as weight.
This is next level stuff. Hate from Houston, it's okay, girl. Keep your chins up. How the fuck did they find a vein to blood? Her pronouns are LBSKG. Her breath is delayed, it's turning chop.
Her breath's delayed.
Wait, you know you're fat when you go into the OBGYN's office and say I'm pregnant, and they say, "Are you sure?"
Are you sure?
I need for fuck's sake. Feminist lesbian Peter Griffin is cholesterol and gender. Pull up the destroyer. Pronouns are last chair bender.
I'm the last. The last chairbender.
How can you not love AI when this exists?
I mean, you know, it's freaking doing deals with an insane human intellect.
Oh, God.
He speaks in heartburn, Thanos was right. But pronouns of 354 finally birth finds a doctor he likes. Do your veins contain anything other than sugar and cholesterol? All these comments are so mean, though I bet she loves her all.
All these comments are so mean, but I bet she loves a roast.
No, this is, you know what this is? This is the robots saying to every human parody writer, you gotta step up your game, bitch.
All right. I wasn't going to do this one, but you've convinced me it's worthwhile. So,
Good, I'm glad.
for anybody else out there that's totally down with the syndrome,
If she's down, I'm a homosexual now. Jennifer Lopez straight out of downtown. If she can handle my special needs, is she trying to get handicapped? Angelina Jolie is cake, no matter the baker.
is she trying to get handicapped?
Oh,
47
man.
out of 46.
Oh, this is good stuff.
Syndrome. I didn't know they started
Said she got damn syndrome.
making them like this. Once we all are linked, she might be down, but something is definitely a Scarlet Johansson.
Is it Scarlett Johansson?
Oh, that's a good one. I like that. Anne Hathaway.
She is down to fuck. At least the commentators say what's from a Hayek. I need someone special in my life. Me, I'm just one time. Selena Gomez, Jenny down the block. This is the rated R material I've been waiting for my whole life.
All right, I'll stop abusing you now. I've been having fun with that all day long, bro.
Slow clap for the robots.
Right, the robots taking over. I actually am starting to look forward to our robot overlords and look forward to serving them well.
Oh, I know. If they're gonna make me laugh like that, they can be my overlords anytime.
Oh, baby, it's just so wrong. All right, let's see what the other thing was that I brought. Oh, wrong button. I got to do the right thing and not the wrong thing. You know. First of all, mute it so it don't blast everybody else out of the room. Then we bounce. So the other thing was, let's see, we did the tablets and the children, and oh man, everything moves after I touch it. Why does it keep wiggling? Seems
That's what she said.
Indeed, it is. You want a quick joke while we're waiting? What do a blonde and a bowl full of jelly have in common?
What's that?
They both wiggle when you eat them. Oh yeah, right.
What's red and bubbly and taps on the window?
Oh my god!
I won't say it.
Say to fuck it. I got time, dude.
A baby in a microwave.
Yeah, there it is.
That guy made me do it
It was my fault the whole way through. So,
the whole way through.
New York Times says ADHD medicine is a scam, and they make men short.
And not just in height.
No, in height. Literally, it because apparently kids who are put on stimulants at before adolescence have something like a 14% reduced growth hormone response. Something to do with the stimulants and the way they break down in the bloodstream. But people who are put on stimulants through adolescence are generally like 15% shorter than people who were not put on stimulants. And that being the only difference between them, as far as we can tell, they're making you
Now,
short, bro.
I don't know what your childhood experience looked like, but I can remember in like first grade, second grade, third grade, there was one kid I had in my class who had like a really crazy case of hyperactivity. So he had to take his little meds every day. That was the only kid I knew in my childhood who was on prescription medication, and I think every kid in that classroom would be on some kind of prescription drug today.
It's something like 49% at this point.
And that's freaking mental.
Well, yeah, that's basically saying that at least half of the population is insane and need to be medicated.
Yes, yes.
That is,
and how can you even categorize something as a disease or a disorder when it's endemic in half the population? You're getting into kind of a definitional crisis there, I would submit.
Yeah, something of a gray area, to be honest. But the thing is, you enter that gray area way long before you get to that point. The significant issue is definitionally, I believe. I think the symptoms of ADHD have been so mega lumped together as to be meaningless at this point, because somebody, people who don't pay attention in different ways for different reasons, So
yeah, and it makes it, and the definitional issue makes it difficult to discern what is actual damage and what is just the professionals playing semantic games and trying to medicalize every single thing in the human condition, because we know they've been trying to do that too. So what is how much of it is just pill pushers pushing pills, and how much of it is genuine disease that's been caused by environmental factors? And that's kind of the thing that I think RFK Jr. wants to get to the bottom of, and more power to him. And how long is it? How has it taken us so long to start asking those questions? I think that's to our shame, really.
So to verify that this is a legitimate story that was legitimately covered, Tim Pool covered it, and we all know he's a reliable source of information, right? Right.
Yep.
Right.
We love half Asian Tim.
Half Asian Tim, he's what I aspire to be when I grow up.
I don't know how he wears that hat on hot days, though.
That's to hide his bald.
God.
His literal pate. That's why you don't brand a beanie.
Seriously.
So handing your kid the tablets, bad idea at breakfast, regardless of what you got to do. Quite frankly, I'm starting to come around to the idea of like internet IDs. And as much as I hate it, I know it's the last free space in the world. It has become largely a financial tool, and that financial tool is easily subverted.
And right? I find myself struggling with that a bit as well, because we've seen just recently in the last year or so countries in Europe starting to pass laws saying kids are not allowed to use social media because it's brain poison. And as a civil libertarian, you want to recoil in horror from something like that. But as a person who cares about childhood development, you want to say, yes, get them the hell away from the screens and let them go do little kid things. And I don't know where the happy medium is between the one and the other.
Yeah, it's going to land firmly in the parents' hands, but that's going to be subverted by the fact that the schools really want to abuse your home time with your kids. They want to send them.
Oh yeah, the schools want to abuse your kids in a whole variety of ways. The schools exist to serve the teachers and the administrators now, not so much the children.
The problem with the Department of Education is a top-down issue, but it's also a bottom-up grassroots issue. There's this tendency of people who think in collectivist terms to go to collectivist nexuses, and the schools and institutions are, by definition, collectivist nexuses. And so when you encounter just your average random school teacher, don't be surprised when they've got purple hair and 15 face piercings. That's
yes, and I think there's a lot of people who don't appreciate the extent to which the average school teacher really does look like that now. And that is really the extent to which in many states and many localities, the schools have become just indistinguishable from left-wing madrasas, and our kids do much of their learning inside classrooms that are festooned like floats in a gay pride parade. And it's all gotten pretty mad as the teacher unions, and I'm not doing single factor analysis here, but it's just one of the things, as the teacher unions have become bigger and bigger and bigger and more powerful, and that was only exacerbated during the stupid made up pandemic, but it didn't help. And thank God that we're actually getting rid of the Department of Education. But how shocking is it that it took 40 years?
I mean, really, the Department of Education has been out of its own lane for so long, it doesn't know where its lane used to be.
It never had a lane. It was the deep state, the administrative state built a big gleaming monument to itself just because it could. That's what the Department of Education is, ultimately.
I mean, you're not wrong, but I mean, that's sort of the same thing to be said with like the EPA, the ATF. You could make the same argument with various other monolithic three-lettered agencies.
I think you can get rid of every federal agency that has come into being in the last 100 years would be a good start, and the government would work better.
Yeah, I mean, it's largely responsible for exterior issues and interior administration. Other than that, it's not supposed to be involved. You know, that's where the collectivists and the conservatives get things crisscrossed. Is you have some conservatives that are this really weird sense of like late 80s or early 80s Democrat, late 70s Democrat that are all about peak oil and the environment and the hippy dippy type stuff. And they are no longer on par with the conservatives of today who look at the mid 90s as being like a liberal paradise. You know what I'm saying?
Really everything since the free trade, the globalist free traders in both parties gained pretty much unfettered, inscrutable power to pursue the trade policies that they wanted, which we've had for the last 35 years. And we're just now starting to evaluate it and walk back a little bit, having seen the various ways in which it's wound up being quite a disastrous thing.
I kind of feel like we may have already lost that battle, though, without just gutting, which thank God it's happening, gutting the Department of Education, Department for Education, which is only one syllable away from the Department for Re-Education. Praxis, the word praxis, the fact that the word praxis exists is the death knell of the idea of having like state-run schools rather than federally run schools. And the reason is the subversion of language in the schools have already taken place to such an extent that they have introduced the concepts and points that they are trying to introduce into the actual math problems and written work of the students, not in the actual lessons and whatnot. So they can look you straight in the face and tell you that none of these concepts are being taught in school. But if you read the actual problems in the book, you see it plainly written.
And that began the moment that Common Core came into being, which was the first time that federal administrators were actually composing curriculum for grade schools. And anybody within the sound of my voice who tried to help their kid do Common Core math problems knows exactly what we are talking about. You could see the identitarian politics creeping into every word problem, every single one of them.
And it got to the point where when my daughter was in like, I don't know, 9th grade or so, she brought home a workbook, and every single problem in the workbook did not just include the necessary information or the distracting information, but also included this is Tommy, he, him, you know, he's such blah, 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 and he has 4 apples, you know.
And when they first established the Department of Education, one of the things that it was never, ever, ever supposed to do was directly create ground level school curriculum, and that lasted until Common Core, until Obama. They just couldn't help themselves anymore, and was that the first slip down the big slippery slope? I don't know, but there was a hell of a lot less leftist institutional capture before Common Core than there is after. And I guess it's pretty easy to look at that as a sort of tipping point where that started being seen as okay, and look at what has happened to the schools and the teachers since then.
I agree. And Common Core was the point at which parents could no longer help their children with homework. I think it was intentionally done to distance the parents from the kids in the household.
And you might not be wrong.
I mean, think about it. If you can't help them with homework, who do they have to turn to? Either other students or some administrators. They end up back in some school after school program for tutoring or whatnot, where they get more indoctrination into the system.
I do math for a living, and I was powerless to do 6th grade math homework because it was that impenetrable. I couldn't make heads or tails of it.
I actually, I took 3 different approaches at it. The first time I ran across the problem, I sat down and tried to beat my head against it until I figured it out. I thought I had a pretty good handle on it. And then the next time it came up and I couldn't plow my face through it like I did the first time, because it was the next year, it was a year later, it was slightly more. Anyway, I called it my sister, and she is one of these here weird woke ass teachers. And I was like, hey, can you explain the trash to me? And she tried to explain to me over the phone. And then I showed up with my kid's workbook, sat down in front of her. I was like, I want you to teach me this, whatever this is, you teach me this. And she's like, that's math. And I was like, you're going to have to show me how this is math. She's like, well, and she went through the whole spiel of everything. And I was like, but why aren't they tens? Why isn't it ones, tens, hundreds? That makes sense. Why are you doing it in like this? It was Common Core. And I was like, I don't like it.
Yeah. And Queenbird raises a good point, because they completely switched the entire philosophy of the process from getting the answer right to having the correct journey on the way to the answer, where you pass all the correct woke, markers on the side of the road, apparently. But it really did become like that. And I don't understand what is so all-fired awful about rote learning, where people just know why is getting to the correct answer so much more important than knowing the correct answer?
So the idea behind that is that problem solving is what makes life better. But the thing about their problem solving is none of their problems are real, and none of them actually need to be solved. They're trying to re-educate the internal mind structure to accept all of these imaginary boxes to be placed in, so that later when they get put in their cubicle, they can treat them like the little communist drone they want to.
Yes. And they also, I think, wanted to be very sure that throughout your school day, no matter which subject you are learning at any given time, that we need to make a way for you to always view that subject through a woke left-wing intersectional identitarian lens. And I think that's much of what Common Core comes out of.
Right. And that's more of a insinuation of praxis into the actual curriculum, rather than the dumbing down of any particular aspect of learning, right? So if you just include all these details in there, the kids are cotton to it. The problem is kids aren't stupid, and they know propaganda when they see it, and they have an instinctive knee-jerk reaction to disbelieve people in power telling them lies. And so when the lies,
as well they should,
it's very difficult to look every single aspect of the school in their face and say, but you are just wrong, sir.
Yeah.
And
that's why they try so assiduously to completely capture these institutions and everybody in them, so that people are deathly afraid to question the religious dogma, because that's what it is ultimately. This is a
You have glitched out, my brother. I hope you return.
religion.
Well. That's not me twigging out, is it? That's him, right? I'm going to drop him backstage right quick, let that finish up. But yeah, it's basically an indoctrination level that's taking place. And it starts when they're in freaking grade school. All right, he's back. Cool. I hope. You there?
Sorry, that was me.
No, you're good. And so, like, you begin at literal grade school levels with this type of stuff being insinuated into the curriculum, and it has nothing to do with the curriculum, nothing to do with solving problems, nothing to do with critical thinking, nothing to do with any aspect of life except for the political indoctrination of the child. And it's everywhere. And this is one of the things I say. Remember, you are the carbon they want to reduce. And the only way the other side can advance to the next generation is if they indoctrinate a few people along the way.
Oh yeah, in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, when V'ger called human beings carbon units, that is exactly the same way your leftist overlords view you.
This is why they think everybody should learn to code, is because they believe we are in a post-work society, and that is not the case. There are still many things that need to be built.
Yeah, that's the world that they've been trying to make for the last 35 years since the globalist free traders, came in charge and crushed all opposition to their program. They thought we don't need manufacturing jobs because we will not need to make things in the United States. We will all have administrative computer jobs, and we will outsource all the icky manual labor to the third world, and everything will be great. But it didn't work out that way, because you can't radically remake a society that quickly, even if you want to.
Even with unlimited coffers derived from the pillaging of Europe.
Yes, which they had.
Which, ironically, is exactly what they had, allegedly.
Yeah, they had every opportunity and resource to realize this program to success, if success was possible, and they were sure convinced that it was for a long time. And that's much of what they hate about Donald Trump, I think. Because he's been out there for the last 35 years saying, no, this is horseshit and nonsense, and this is exactly how it's going to go wrong. And here we are several decades later. It has gone wrong in exactly the same way he said it was going to, and they can't abide a man being that right when they were that mistaken.
Absolutely. It's kind of sad because, like, I've been going on various panels here recently, doing different, like, debate bro type things, just going to talk to the people to see what the people are saying. And there is such an amazing division in just the general populace. You have people who are completely on board with the MSM narrative of the way things work in the world, and these people are violent. They will violently defend their ideas, their ideals, and their thoughts. And
Yep.
anyone who stands against them is just automatically evil and on the wrong side of history. And then
if they go on a panel with you and it doesn't end well for them, they will swat you the next day.
They might swat you. At best, they'll spend the next 2 or 3 days bad mouthing you on every panel they go on, if you're not coming.
Yep.
And that's on a good day. That's the best you can hope for. So
yeah.
When you beat them down,
but it is the politics of personal destruction, and let's make no mistake about that.
Right, they're not interested in coming after your ideas, your talking points, or your perceptions. They are after your livelihood, your finances, and your life.
Yep. And yeah, they will either silence you or resort to more extreme measures.
Right.
Or silence you one way or the other, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying, because if you want to be an honest debater and you want to try to have the conversation, and you can't find anyone that's rational enough to not firebomb your house to talk to, it makes it very difficult to meet on any kind of common ground.
I know. When people can't even agree on the basic parameters of reality. And also when you have to wonder, if I get into what I think is a good-natured argument with this person and it goes well for me and it doesn't go well for them, are they going to try and harm me and my family? And oftentimes the answer is yes.
Check this out. I ended up on a panel talking about contrails, right? And the difference between contrails and chemtrails, whether chemtrails are contrails, what contrails are, and whether or not they could be considered chemtrails, the whole nine. And there was a bunch of disagreement on the panel, the four guys who were debating, about what it takes to be defined as a chemtrail and whether or not they were being done by passenger planes. And I don't see the necessity of the passenger planes issue. And so I kind of thought it was a non-starter debate, because the language, the people involved disagree on the definitions to such an extent that they could not have an intelligible conversation about the subject matter. And they just ended up arguing about definitions throughout most of it. And all of them declared winner. They didn't have anything to bring, and yada, yada, yada. And right after all of this is done, the two guys who were up there throwing chemical formulas around, I asked them, what are the additives in jet fuel? And they were like, well, it depends on what type of plane you're talking about. I said, it does. That's true. But isn't it determined by the type of catalyst that's in the jet engine? And they both went real quiet. And then the moderator changed the subject completely, just immediately pivoted off of that. And we never came back to it. And I was like, I'm going to count that as a win, right? Like,
yeah.
You can make the argument 99% of what comes out of the exhaust is water and carbon dioxide, but there are a double handful of chemicals that were added to the fuel for reasons, and mainly and EPA.
What you witnessed right there is the limits of intellectual honesty, where I instead of saying, yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, instead it just has to be silence, change the subject. And that's just not a strong look.
Well, to be clear,
if you're so invested in your pet theory that you can't even respond to a question you don't know by saying I don't know, then you're too caught up in the thing.
To be clear, I don't believe that the Raging Tomato was involved in any type of, shenanigans behind the scenes or anything like that. I think she just saw a direction where half the panel was fixing to spurg out on me because I found a gap in the armor that nobody had considered. And she didn't want that in the after show. She wanted that for the actual debate. And she just transitioned out of it. And I'm waiting patiently to get that DM on the follow-up debate, because
you're just waiting for the torches and pitchfork mob to arrive.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, what's up, Em? And the thing is that got me was like there was a solid 6-second silence when I asked what determined the additive in the jet fuel, and they both sat there for a second staring at the camera, and then one of them was like, "Who, me?" And he was the one that was throwing around all the chemical formulas. And I was like, dude, I don't care who can answer this question. You just kind of give me an answer that makes sense, right? I'm not
three simple little words. I don't know.
I know why they choose the different additives, because the different additives respond to different catalysts differently. And so you have one that makes it not gum up at a certain temperature, one that makes it disperse better, one that makes it positively charged. And depending on what the catalysts in the jet engine are, determine what the resultant chemicals coming out the back are. And there are always chemicals, and they didn't want to have that conversation at all, bro.
Well, and I think the mixtures are different, even just according to what altitude the airport is where you're taking off from.
Yeah, there's variations there, but when it really comes down to it, as far as the bulk of the differences in the jet fuel, largely the additives specifically, to do with what type of jet engine it's running, which makes sense. I mean, largely it's just kerosene. I mean, let's be honest. It's just
yeah. It's nothing complex.
Right. What makes it jet fuel are the additives added to make it jet fuel. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting that the same class of person that will refuse any concept of a chemtrail while admitting that global, that what do they call it, global engineering projects are underway and being
geoengineering. Yeah,
geoengineering. That's it. Geoengineering projects are being perpetrated by different governments on the planet, but won't accept the concept that any contrail could possibly be a chemtrail without it showing up on this list of geoengineering sites that I've got over here that they have to fill out before they test anything. And I was like, have you ever met the CIA? Like,
and it would be nice to be able to explore the question and maybe find out the answer without immediately veering off into freaking esoteric conspiracy nightmare lunatic land, but I guess that's asking too much.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anytime you mention anything that's a little bit off the reservation, you might as well have a tinfoil hat on and be screaming the end is nigh. And it's not the same thing here. I mean, it's not an apple.
Which is exactly why I did. Which is exactly why I did the advisory about no goddamn horse shit Apollo moon landing conspiracy shit.
Let's go ahead and get into that. Listen, hey, seriously, y'all, I don't want to have to block people in my chat. So, like, even if you don't believe in Jizz Man from space, just let it happen. Just let it happen, yo. It's easier that way. I don't have to do things later that I might regret.
I mean, I am willing to tolerate a lot of different kinds of human idiocy, but a man has to have limits, doesn't he? And I mean, if you flat out deny the validity of the most well documented events in human history, then just get off my chat. That's all I got to say.
It's so funny to watch people spurt out about it, though.
I know, it is. It really is.
Okay, so Jim Lovell. You want to run through what he did, where he did it, and how? I mean, how much of this do we want to deep dive into? Because
I mean, back when there was no such thing as a space station, and the time you accrued in space really meant something. Jim Lovell had 29 days, 19 hours, 5 minutes across 4 missions, and for a long time, up until the Soviets started building space stations, he was the man with the most time in space. I believe he remains the only man to fly to the moon twice without landing, and we know exactly why that was. And you may have heard me referred to him as the American Shackleton in the open, and I think that's a perfectly fitting descriptor for the man, because sometimes the test of greatness isn't how well you lead your men through a successful mission. It's how well you bring your men back alive from a horrifically failed mission, nothing in which you ever planned for, and nobody had any business surviving. That's what Jim Lovell pulled off. And
dude, I gotta say, them boys with the slide rules back then were the real heroes and all that. I mean, Jim Lovell, one who had the nerves of steel. That freaking radio message. If you didn't know better, you'd think the problem was he burned his toast. Houston, we've had a problem.
Yep.
Just
and that's
collected. What he might as well have said is, Houston, we're all fucked.
Yeah, and even still, even to the casual listener, even that sounds, perfectly matter of fact. The guys back on the ground, they could tell the sense of urgency in that message, because you don't say over the radio on the public loop that we've had a problem unless there's a serious fucking problem.
Unless it's a problem that needs probleming right now. And like I said, those boys with the slide rule, I can't remember who was the dude's name who did the he had measles or whatever, was supposed to get measles or something.
Ken Mattingly was supposed to be the lunar module pilot on the flight. He catches the measles from Charlie Duke 48 hours before takeoff, and they and Lovell is left with the impossible decision that do you want to swap out your LMP 2 days before the flight, or do you want to just delay the entire crew and take a later flight? And how the hell do you even answer that? So he decides to take Jack Swigert from the backup crew and swap him out for Ken Mattingly. And yeah, but that's a whole other complicating factor. This would have been a harrowing enough nightmare as it was, even if it was with your prime crew that was intact, that had trained for the whole thing together for the last 18 months. But it wasn't. You had a third wheel here who had only been with you for a couple days, but you had to still make this thing work. And they did, because Jim Lovell is one of the greatest leaders of men who ever lived.
I want to say that, and I firmly believe this, if the situation had been reversed, if they had taken Mattingly with them, they might not have made
He never got the measles, by the way. He would have been fine.
That man sat in that simulator on the ground and ran through problems until they solved every single problem. He did not walk away. They brought him food in the damn capsule, and he just kept right on working on it. Run it again.
Yeah, and much of that stuff that they portray in the movie is totally realistic. The only license they really take is that they give Mattingly a little bit too much of the credit, because it was actually a lot of different guys working in the simulator. It's fine that they did that. You want to focus on one character instead of 10, but yeah, that was all true. He wouldn't, and it's true that he wouldn't even let him turn the lights on because they don't have lights up there. You give me the same flashlight they have. That's a thing that he really said.
Well, I mean, that was the only way the problems was going to be solved, is because we are past the slide rules at this point. We're off the reservation. We are no longer in the realm of we have plans to deal with this. There are no plans to deal with what just took place. So we have to.
And also, when they have to build the improvised oxygen filter for the LEM, because we've got round cartridges and a square hole. So what the hell do we do with what we've got on board the spacecraft? And again, the scene in the movie where they just dumped all the shit on the table and said, "We got to make this out of this." That's pretty much how it happened. And they did it. They pulled it off. It took them less than a day to solve that problem, and then they had no more CO2 problem for the entire flight.
I came across an interesting account of that back when I was in high school, and I was looking into all this stuff. One of the engineers that was in the room when that happened, they walked in and they dumped a huge box out and drug in 2 other boxes that had other stuff. It's like, look, this is everything that's in the LEM. This is everything they have. There is nothing that they have that is not here. And one of the guys went, "That's not true." It stood up, walked away, and came back with a box of screws and set it down. They have 393 of these. And it was like, oh yeah, right, screws. How do we miss that? And so it wasn't just one person or even a small team of people. These guys went from that list of things they had and stripped everything on the base as far as they could go to get multiple sets of the same stuff so they could all work the problems at the same time.
Right, and that's another thing we should bring up, because that was another bit of narrative dramatic license that the film took. They kind of assigned all the heroics to Gene Kranz's shift, but there was actually four shifts every day. There was 4 flight directors and 4 crews, and 6 hours each. They rotate for 24 hours, and it's fine that they wanted to have Ed Harris play Gene Kranz and give him that heroic role, but you've got one of your 4 shifts who is on duty at any given time, but the other 3 shifts throughout that week, to the extent that they possibly could, they stayed on site and were working the back room, and you had all 4 shifts working the problem at all times, the maximum amount of brain power you could possibly have on the thing, and they pulled the thing off.
Exactly. And the fact that it was possible to pull it off is astounding in and of itself, because like you said, round peg, square peg, round hole. Yeah. It can't solve that problem. That is an instrument.
And it's a problem that never occurred to anybody that they might have to solve, because why? They they had kicked around ideas a little bit about what if we had an engine failure in the CM and we had to use the LEM for a lifeboat, but they didn't really think it through about everything that would be involved in that, including obviously the square freaking cartridges in the round freaking holes, because the LEM is built by Grumman, the CM is built by Rockwell. They're not coordinating with each other to have commonality in the shapes of their oxygen filters, because why the hell would they? And it never occurs to anybody why it would matter until you've got a crew on the way to the moon and you have the most catastrophic failure in the history of the program, and you got to figure out how to pull their asses out of the fire.
Exactly. And no. You have to figure out how to pull their ass, how they can pull their asses out of the fire. And they have to do it right on the first try, while hurtling through space at whatever miles an hour. That is balls, dude. I know you don't got no choice, and I get it, but the fact that, we've had a problem turns into, like you said, a modern day Shackelford expedition. Homie come home. He brought him home.
Yeah, I'm gonna, there's a quote I want to read that I'm gonna find right now. So, monologue the people for a minute.
I can do these things that you mentioned. So, as of course, there's Tom Hanks, that whole Apollo 13 movie craze and everything. And there's been a lot of sort of like shade left on the ground around the people that are actually involved in that. And most of them wouldn't even really debate on the issue, because they were part of solving the problem, but they all just did their part. Everybody involved did their part. And Glenn, what was his name? Glenn,
John Glenn,
one of the, I don't know, maybe, yes, I think so, one of the best logistical managers in the history of the species. His ability to take 10,000 people and then have a freaking spaceship take off from the effort of 10,000 people. Just
all right. I got the quote. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're good.
It's a quote that's about Sir Ernest Shackleton, and I think it applies equally to Jim Lovell. And here it is. Quote, "For scientific discovery, give me Scott. For speed and efficiency of travel, give me Amundsen. But when disaster strikes and all hope is gone, get down on your knees and pray for Shackleton."
There you go. That's facts, bro.
Maybe not the best expedition leader to have when things are going right, but when things have gone hopelessly fucking sideways and you're just looking for a way to all get out alive, that's the man you want. And that's the man we wanted with Jim Lovell. Was he Neil Armstrong? No. Was he Buzz Aldrin? No. Was he John Young? No. But God damn it, he was and is Jim Lovell, and nobody else could have pulled that fat out of the fire the way that guy did. And God bless him for it. And he's one of the greatest heroes of our country for all time because of that.
Absolutely. I got no smoke for the man. National treasure, all the way.
And I had forgotten that Marilyn Lovell passed away a couple years ago, which is too bad. They were married for 72 years, I think, and just a great American marriage. The man is nothing without the wife, and that's one of those cases where find yourself a good life partner and stick with her the whole way.
Can I wax philosophical on that for a minute?
Yes.
Some of the panels I've been in recently have been like red pill / manosphere / that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sphere versus feminist debates. I'm gonna jump here right quick. Gentlemen, in your life, if you're sitting in your mom's basement right now, licking Cheeto dust off your fingers and trying to figure out where your next Red Bull is going to come from, I've got hope for you. I am not a new age guru. I will not save your life. I will not make you a Chad. You will not become an absolute dominating force in any bar, club, or social gathering you ever come across. But if you do that thing that you do privately, whatever it is, and I don't mean masturbation, I mean like whatever it is, if you paint miniatures, if you play Magic the Gathering, if you freaking do latch hooking. Go find a group that does latch hooking, that does miniatures, that does these things, and go do that with people out there in the world. And without effort on your part, you will encounter an individual who reflects your interests almost perfectly. And they may not actually be the one, but they know the one. You'll meet them, you'll hang out with them, then you'll move on to somebody else because you now have a social life and you're no longer sucking on Cheeto-stained fingers in your mom's basement. That's the trick. I just solved all of your social problems. Now you've got to go out and get rejected until it works. And don't get angry about it. I mean, mid-70s anime cartoons aren't everyone's cup of tea, but there's a chick out there who loves freaking Gundam. There's a chick out there who can quote every single episode of The Price is Right. There's a woman out there just for you that knows the difference between fuchsia and crimson. I'm done. I'm sorry.
Yes. And you are much more likely to encounter that girl in the real world than you are on the internet. Orders of magnitude more likely. Just like the man was saying, that man just gave you some sage advice. You should put it in your pocket, listen to it, don't forget it.
And there's a couple of other things that go along with that. You don't necessarily have to perpetrate these on people, but it would help along the way. Don't worry about what people can do for you. Just go out and try to be useful to people. Anyone. It doesn't matter who it is. I mean, of course, choose your targets. You don't want to try to help out the guy with the machete walking down the middle of the street with a head in his hand. Maybe leave him out of it. But, carry something heavy for someone who can't. Help someone cross the street. Take a freaking walk, bro. Like, just go out and look. And because people look around, they go, well, I don't really ever have to see anybody have a problem. That's because you're in your basement sucking on your Cheeto-stained fingers. Go out in the world and do some stuff. One of the coolest things I've seen recently, there's a town not far away from here, and about 8 months ago, randomly, some of the students at the high school decided to try to do a sock hop, and they decided themselves to do old school style, where you have like a bake off or whatever, and then you basically bid on cake slices, right? And you basically pick your date based on the cake, not based on who they are. And so all the girls baked cakes and all the boys brought corsages, and they went and checked the cake. And the girls that, so there's this one girl over here with like 14 corsages, and she's chubby Jenny with the freaking squinty glasses, and, just made one bacon pineapple upside down cake. It's a beautiful thing.
And there's a reason why we do all those rituals. And it's a good. Why do you think that the boys have football practice and the girls have cheerleading practice on the same field at the same time? That's all a mating ritual. That is you're trying to pair up your finest young men with your finest young women, and there's nothing wrong with that. Societies have been doing that for many, many, many thousands of years. And it's just what societies do, because societies have a vested interest in continuing themselves. They have a vested interest in the next generation being born, and why wouldn't you want your best young boys and your best young women making babies with each other? Maybe even staying in the little small town forever. Maybe there's nothing wrong with it when the prom king and the prom queen get married to each other and raise a family, and she's a homemaker and he works for the city. That's how America became great in the first goddamn place.
Amen, brother. Our school went a step farther with that. Most days when it was sunny and there was no threat of rain or anything, all of the clubs after school programs happened in the bleachers and on the football field. And so it kind of kept everybody together. But like you said, it also had the effect of a larger bonding ceremony that's lost in modern parlance. I mean, everybody was in their own groups, but they were in their own groups together. Right?
Yeah, so you're in your subgroups inside the same larger community that we are all invested in.
Exactly, and that puts a personal investment in each and every one of these people's actions. So even the guy everybody picks on down on the end that's in the freaking flag girl corps, right? You still want him to do better than the other weird guy that's in the flag girl corps on the other team.
Yeah, the nerdy guy who gets picked last in PE class is probably going to be the guy who owns the biggest company in town 30 years from now.
Exactly.
And all the girls will wish they would have got with him.
Yeah, he's a passport bro now.
Yeah.
I know that guy. I went to school with that guy who disappeared around right after graduation and showed back up 8 years later with a passport wife and a couple of $1 million sitting around. Just bought him a couple of hundred. Built a house.
He was a big hit at the 20th reunion.
Oh no, he didn't go to the 20th reunion. He sent that absolutely massive bouquet of flowers that was bigger than the freaking champagne display that was at the 20th reunion.
A flower arrangement shaped like a middle finger.
It might have been before they got to it. They had to take the part to get it through the door, which was absolutely hilarious.
Here's looking at you, you fucking yokels.
Right? I mean, there's no better way to tell everybody on the world to fuck off than 600 acres around your house.
Oh, I know. I'm sure it's been done before.
My dad pulled it off with 60. My father
tell the story.
My father's one of the most antisocial people I've ever met in my life. And I grew up my whole life with no clue that he was a complete and total antisocial creature. Like, if it's more than 3 people, he's not interested and doesn't want one there if he can get away with it. He would rather sit alone in his room.
Sounds like my kind of gentleman.
I mean, I get it. Yeah, I totally get it. Like, he's had enough. It's good. It's fine. But having grown up and moved away from that type of like weird cloistered existence where everything outside is evil and it needs to stay away, to realizing that yes, it is evil, but it's also kind of funny too.
Yes.
You know, it's been a very eye-opening experience because I don't believe I actually looked until I got clean. I think I was still under the veil of self-interpretation previous to that, and I didn't become self-aware until after I got off all the dopes. And having become self-aware, I am now stuck in a situation of like, what on God's green earth is going on with you people? Why are y'all all so freaking? I mean, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything to you. All I said was, I think we need to get a grip on this competitiveness between males and females. And suddenly everybody's mad at me. And I'm like, go to a sock hop. I mean, go to your local farmer's market and buy you some freaking collards. You don't have to eat them.
Right?
I mean,
just don't clean them in the bathtub like Kamala Harris says you should, because they'll taste like fucking shampoo.
You fucking got me.
Kamala did it to me. Every time I hear someone say collard greens, I think about her bathtub now. What a curse that is.
Oh, Mia Meyer. Okay, who's Democrats going to bring up? Are they seriously considering running AOC?
They can't do that. So what? You're trying to find a woman of color who's even more vacuous than the last one who just got her ass kicked? Is that the strategy here? Because I don't think it should be.
I think they're looking for malleable. You got to think they just lost Nancy Pelosi, and it looks like they're going to lose a handful of some of the upper echelon of your Democrat Party because they're aging out of office, right?
Their bench is so unattractive looking right now. I wonder if they might not focus on getting a squishy Republican to flip parties and maybe rallying around that person. I don't know. I don't see anybody on their bench who I think has a chance of defeating I don't even care who the Republicans run in 28, whether it's Vance or DeSantis, either one of those. It'll probably be one of those two. I don't see anybody on the Democrat side that can defeat those guys.
I have a radical idea, and I pitched this once before and got shouted out of the panel. Don't yell. You can be mad as you want to, but don't yell. What if, stay with me, what if Gavin Newsom pivots and pulls a Donald Trump?
That might be how that might be the way he's attempting to position himself. I wouldn't put it past him. Yeah, you might be onto something there.
He has really walked back a whole bunch of his more outlandish statements in the past few years, and so it don't look good.
Including saying he never said them, even though they're all on video. But you do you.
Get a super cut out of him. Hey, dude, it's about that time.
Yeah, about that time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for joining us here on the Blast Radius. We sure do appreciate it. When you skip WrestleMania and put your Easter Sunday on hold to come here and do this thing with us that we do for 90 minutes each Sunday evening, I'm going to have a bunch of new stuff for you this week. Squatch is going to have a bunch of new stuff for you this week. We will convene back here next Sunday night, as we always do, looking bright and hale and hearty and chipper. Until then, have a great day and a pleasant tomorrow. See you next time. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?